Did you know that Darth Maul had an earring during the Phantom Menace, or that Quinlan Vos appears on Tatooine, or even that Obi-Wan was originally a name that was going to be passed down from master to apprentice? Well, today I'm analyzing the top 20 craziest Episode 1 facts, and in honor of this being the first CGI-heavy Star Wars film, I'll also be looking at how many visual effects shots are in each Star Wars movie. At 20 is Darth Maul earring. So actor Ray Park, who portrayed Darth Maul in the first prequel film, wore an earring while in the makeup chair, and as a result, George Lucas saw this and decided that they should keep it, which is why Darth Maul has an earring in this movie and every subsequent piece of Star Wars media to follow, including the Clone Wars and Rebels.
You may have forgotten me, but I will never forget you.
19. Palpatine smiles. When Queen Amidala tells newly elected Chancellor Palpatine that she will be returning to Naboo, while Palpatine puts on a facade of disappointment and shock, you can start to see a half smile form on his face, suggesting that he is happy that his plan is going as he has foreseen. And there are actually many ways of looking at how he could have planned this out, but this definitely makes sense right here. And at 18 is Qui-Gon represents. Qui-Gon Jinn represents the old order of Jedi in this movie, as he has an optimistic, faithful view on the will of the Force, contrasted with the ignorant view of many of the other Jedi and the cynical mindset found throughout much of the original trilogy Jedi. Next up at 17, the song you hear during the Flag Parade is actually a higher-pitched altered version of the Emperor's theme from Return of the Jedi. Try giving it a listen. At 16 is Obi-Wan name. At one point, Obi-Wan Kenobi was going to be the name of the older Jedi, while Qui-Gon was to be the younger Jedi in Episode 1. However, at the end of the movie, after the older Jedi Obi-Wan died, he was to pass on the name of Obi-Wan to his Padawan, that being the Obi-Wan we see on Tatooine 32 years later. And at 15 is Darth Plagueis. So Darth Plagueis, the master of Sidious, who is talked about in Revenge of the Sith, is actually still alive during the invasion of Naboo and death of Qui-Gon Jinn, and was killed shortly after by his apprentice. This makes him and Palpatine the two Sith Lords, and Darth Maul nothing more than a Sith assassin. 14. Famous actors. Real quick, can you identify the two famous actors in this image? Well, it's actually Keira Knightley and Richard Armitage, who played Elizabeth Swann and Thorin Oakenshield in the Pirates of the Caribbean and Hobbit film trilogies, respectively. And the reason the voice of Queen Amidala always sounded so weird is because voice modulation was done to Natalie Portman's voice to make it identical to that of Keira Knightley's. At 13 is Quinlan Vos. Jedi Master Quinlan Vos from the Expanded Universe and Clone Wars show actually appeared in the Phantom Menace on Tatooine in the background. When making the movie, he was simply there as one of the many background Tatooine aliens, because yes, as it turns out, Quinlan Vos is actually of the Kifar species, not a human, because apparently face tattoos are enough to make you a different species in Star Wars. However, this original background character was retconned to be Quinlan Vos on an undercover mission to Mos Espa. 12. Gunray Reagan. Newt Gunray was meant to have similarities to United States President Ronald Reagan, and actually if you look at his last name, it is Reagan backwards. You know, Gun Ray, Ray Gun. At 11 is Q-tips. So for the effect of the massive Boonta Eve pod race crowd,
and you know what else is massive?
They were actually made up of Q-tips with a fan blowing underneath that gave off the illusion of movement in the crowd. And Ben Burr, sound designer of the Star Wars movies, recorded a crowd at a 49ers football game for the sounds of the different aliens and people here. Now let's real quick look at how many visual effects shots are in all 9 Star Wars movies. While Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith have a reported 2,200 visual effects shots, The Phantom Menace only had 1,950 or so in total. A New Hope has around 400, Empire Strikes Back has around 600, Return of the Jedi around 900, whereas with the sequels, The Force Awakens has 2,100 shots in total, The Last Jedi has around 2,000 visual effects shots, and The Rise of Skywalker has around 1,900, closer to The Phantom Menace. At 10 is Natalie Portman's school. Natalie Portman was only 16 during the filming of The Phantom Menace and 18 when it came out. When the film premiere party was going on, she actually couldn't be there because she had to go home and study for her high school finals. However, don't worry, she was able to attend the premieres of the next 2 Star Wars prequels, and for the Revenge of the Sith premiere, she actually had a buzz cut, which is not something I was expecting to see today. Padme with a buzz cut.
You're so beautiful.
Surprise,
Number 9. Trailer. This refers to the fact that people would buy tickets to see movies in 1999 just to watch the Phantom Menace trailer and then walk out. I mean, why didn't they just pull it up on YouTube? Oh yeah, right. At 8 is Michael Jackson Jar Jar. It is rumored that Michael Jackson was interested in playing Jar Jar Binks and actually approached George Lucas about it, but he was also hoping to play Jar Jar in prosthetic makeup, while George was more interested in a completely CGI character. At 7 is Darth Maul was a woman. For the original designs of Darth Maul, George Lucas asked concept and storyboard artist Ian McKeag to design a Sith from his worst nightmare, so he cooked up this monstrosity, and then George asked him to draw his second worst nightmare, which is why we ended up getting the final horned version of Maul we see today. There were other designs considered as well, some of which later would turn into Mother Talzin and other Star Wars characters. At 6 is, funny enough, the 6-hour cut. Actor Jake Lloyd reported in an interview with That Shelf that a 6-hour cut of The Phantom Menace existed and that it was mind-blowingly awesome. This likely included an hour-long version of the pod race, among other extended sections of the movie that hadn't been cut down yet. But real quick, here's the Christian advice of this video. If you want to get back to the main video, you can skip to this time right here. Today we are again looking at the Apocrypha with Bel and the Dragon, which is an addition to Daniel in the Old Testament, and this is actually Bel and the Dragon 38, which says, Bel said, "You have remembered me, O God, and have not forsaken those who love you." This is of course when Daniel is put into the lion's den, and God makes sure that the lions don't attack him and that he gets food to survive. And I feel like the most important lesson here, or just from this specific, these words here, is that it says that God has not forsaken those who love you. I think that is a very important thing that some people miss, is that obviously you have to be faithful to God and work for God, but we also have to love God. Love is a very powerful, important thing, and that's kind of a big takeaway from here as far as I'm concerned. Now here are a few announcements. For one, I just want to say make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it, because that does give me some good engagement and pushes this out to more people that might also enjoy this type of content. Album of the week is going to The Forever Story by Jid. I upload normal videos every Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, also shorts every single day. But yeah, back to the video. At 5, always a bigger fish. This line is related to the Sith mentality explored in this very movie, with the rule of 2, where behind every threat there is always a larger one working in the shadows. At 4 is the beginning. While the name we know now for Star Wars Episode 1 is of course The Phantom Menace, when George Lucas first started writing the film in 1994, The title, The Beginning, was considered at first as this was not only the first episode of this massive saga, but also a prelude of sorts to what the rest of the movies are about. At 3 is Ben Quadraneros. The Phantom Menace is the only Star Wars movie to feature the most important and well-written character in the Star Wars saga, that being Ben Quadraneros.
I was about to say that.
At 2, originally just Obi-Wan. When the movie was first being worked on, the central character at one point was to simply be Obi-Wan and have us follow his adventures in rescuing the Queen from Naboo and saving Anakin. However, this was changed to continue the passing of the torch theme that had been in the movies since 1977. Do you think that the prequels would have worked better if this movie focused more on Obi-Wan and Anakin than Qui-Gon and Anakin? I think it works very well either way. Number 1. Shakespearean Tragedy. The prequels, including The Phantom Menace, were actually intended to represent a Shakespeare-like tragedy, with Anakin representing the tragic hero, Obi-Wan representing the righteous rival, and Palpatine representing the true corrupter of evil. And if you enjoyed this type of video, I actually did one on the 20 craziest facts from the Clone Wars, which you can watch if you click this video right here. But yeah, see ya. Following George Lucas's The Phantom Menace in 1999 came Star Wars Episode II: Attack of the Clones, which went in new directions never seen before from Star Wars, and also completely redefined how fans saw the Clone Wars. With this comes a variety of in-movie and behind-the-scenes facts, such as a deleted scene of Palpatine revealing who is truly behind Shmi Skywalker's death, or how Mace Windu only has a purple lightsaber because Sam Jackson requested it himself. But I handpicked the 20 most mind-blowing ones to show you today. Starting off at 20 is the opening crawl. So Attack of the Clones is the only Star Wars movie to pan the camera up towards a planet or ship rather than down as we see in every other film. This could possibly be to hint at how different of a story this is from the other episodes, or to suggest that something is off about everything in the movie, which would make sense considering the Jedi are acquiring an army which will exterminate them, the Republic is giving emergency powers to Palpatine who will soon create the Empire, and Anakin begins his relationship with Padme, which will lead to the downfall of both. At 19 is Assassin. The second attempt to take out Padme on Coruscant was orchestrated by Darth Sidious, who ordered Count Dooku, who ordered Newt Gunray, who sent Jango Fett, who sent Zam Wesell, who sent a droid, who sent 2 poisonous Kohuns to kill Padme. Now technically it started with Newt Gunray, which cuts down the conspiracy by a third, but it is still a very convoluted scene nonetheless. And next up at 18 is Ki-Adi-Mundi lightsaber. In the Petranaki arena on Geonosis, Jedi Master Ki-Adi-Mundi had multiple different lightsaber colors within the same sequence. While it is blue when he first arrives, and blue when he gets on one of the LAAT gunships, the weapon actually had a green coloration at one point in between these shots. While the real problem here is an editing mistake, this was later addressed in lore as being a multicolored lightsaber with 2 crystals that Mundi owned. At 17 is Anakin actors. Hayden Christensen was the final actor chosen to portray Anakin, in part due to his ability to handle the darker side of Anakin, as well as his chemistry with Natalie Portman.
I don't like sand.
With this said, Hayden was just one of 400 actors considered to play the grown-up Anakin, which also included Paul Walker, Christian Bale, and Heath Ledger. I could definitely see Heath and Christian doing a good job with that role. At 16 is Mace Windu lightsaber. Attack of the Clones marked the first time we ever got to see Mace Windu's glorious purple lightsaber. However, this was nearly not the case. Samuel L. Jackson himself actually requested the purple lightsaber from George Lucas while approaching the action scene in the arena because purple is Sam's favorite color, and also to help distinguish this from the other Jedi in the arena. And it's funny how one little request led to 23 years of extensive lightsaber lore in the expanded universe. At 15 is Anakin Legend. Based on information from the Legends book, Tatooine Ghost, we discover that Anakin's massacre of this Tusken Raider Legion was actually turned into a bit of folklore among the Tuskens, with Anakin representing some sort of demonic figure. I suppose this makes sense considering this was arguably the first appearance of Darth Vader in the galaxy, and the book this comes from is actually about Leia after Return of the Jedi, finding out about her dad's lineage on Tatooine, which is pretty interesting. At 14 is Dracula Yoda. When filming the fight scene with Count Dooku in the Geonosis hangar bay, Sir Christopher Lee was given a Yoda model to use for reference. This model was given Dracula fangs as a nod to Lee's work as Count Dracula in multiple films from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, such as Horror of Dracula. And as a side note, the fact that Christopher Lee went from looking like this to this in 1958 to 2003, 45 years later, is a testament to how well he aged. At 13 is Shmi Skywalker's death. There was a cut concept that was to be revealed in Revenge of the Sith, where the Tusken Raiders were paid by Count Dooku on orders from Darth Sidious. Basically, during Anakin's duel with Dooku on the Invisible Hand above Coruscant in the next movie, Palpatine would reveal to Anakin that Dooku in fact orchestrated those events and had the Tuskens capture, torture, and kill his mother. This would have driven Anakin even more to killing Dooku for his own personal revenge. Next up at 12 is Count Dooku Birthright. Count Dooku actually left the Jedi Council having the ability to gain his birthright as Count of Sereno. So not only did he become a Sith to rid corruption from the Jedi and Republic, but also to gain more power in the galaxy. Little did he know that he was working for someone who was using that very corruption to gain the highest power possible in the Galactic Senate. Or I guess he did know by the time of Revenge of the Sith, based off of his confused look at the Chancellor here. At 11 is Geonosian Extermination. After the Geonosians completed work on the Death Star, the Empire exterminated them with sterilization through the use of poison canisters, leaving the lone survivor Click-Clack, who we meet in Star Wars Rebels. Now real quick, before we get back to the list, I want to look at who is the main villain of Attack of the Clones. So one interesting aspect about Attack of the Clones is that while it is clear in the Phantom Menace Darth Maul is the main physical threat and specific villain for that movie, in Attack of the Clones it is debatable as to whether this new role is given over to Count Dooku or Jango Fett. And while it may feel like Dooku is barely in the movie, looking at their respective screen times, Jango Fett has only 4 minutes of screen time, whereas Dooku was given 9, making him technically the main villain of the film. At 10 is Jar Jar's Big Adventure. The Phantom Menace received a large portion of its hate from the inclusion of Jar Jar Binks, specifically his comedic antics and slapstick humor that often went for longer than many believed it needed to. But when making Episode 2, George Lucas gave it the working title of Jar Jar's Big Adventure to prank the cast as pre-production for the movie was finishing up. Personally, I think this would have been a much better movie.
What did you say?
Next up at 9 is the Outlander set. With Attack of the Clones having even more CGI than the previous film, The Phantom Menace, it makes sense that the majority of sets for this movie were either blue screen studios or practical floors with blue screen extensions. The Outlander Club from the Coruscant chase sequence was an all-practical set with dozens of extras with both human and alien appearances, which made this a more visceral set to work on, and was actually Hayden Christensen's favorite scene to shoot. At 8 is the Awas. The Awas seen on Camino in this film were actually designed by concept artist Ralph McQuarrie for The Empire Strikes Back to appear flying around Bespin's clouds, but this was cut due to budget constraints. They were then later considered for Return of the Jedi, as well as Naboo in The Phantom Menace as Gungan mounts, but finally saw use with the Kaminoans in Attack of the Clones. And at 7 is Sifo Dyas. Jedi Master Sifo Dyas was originally going to be named Sido Dyas, an alias for Darth Sidious, who orchestrated the creation of the clone army. After a typo in the script left it as Sifo-Dyas, George Lucas decided to make this a separate Jedi character who helped create the clone army and died 10 years before the movie. Sifo-Dyas actually had the ability of foresight and was able to see the approaching war for the Republic. The Jedi disagreed with his idea of creating an army, and thus he was removed from the council. However, Sifo-Dyas ordered the Kaminoan clone army on his own and was sadly betrayed by his former friend Dooku, who took over the operation himself. At 6 is Easter eggs. In the background of this movie, there are multiple Easter eggs relating to the original trilogy. During the Coruscant speeder chase, there are 2 TIE fighters chasing an X-Wing, and on Naboo, when Anakin and Padme arrive, there are multiple YT-1300 Corellian light freighters, the same model as the Millennium Falcon. But real quick, here's the Christian advice of this video. If you want to get back to the main video, you can skip to this time right here. And today we're actually looking at Philippians 4:13, which is a very well-known quote from the Bible, which says, "All things are possible through Christ who strengthens me." And the main takeaway from this is that even when something seems absolutely impossible and, the world defines it as something that cannot be done, you have to believe that through Jesus Christ, who is King, who is Lord, who is God of the universe, and through the Father, you will have the strength to do it. So keep this in mind when you do difficult tasks. And getting back into the video, I just want to say, remember, you can subscribe to the channel if you want to, and also I upload normal videos every Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and also shorts every single day. Moving into our top 5, we have Jedi ignorance. The Jedi's belief that Count Dooku, as a former Jedi, is not capable of murder and is rather a political idealist foreshadows Mace Windu's inability to see that Anakin could be the one to kill him when confronting Darth Sidious in Revenge of the Sith. This is the key to the Jedi's ignorance in general during this era, to believe that they understand everything and that it's impossible for anyone to rid them of their position of power and control. At 4 is Palpatine's plan for Padme. While it's often debated whether Palpatine wanted Padme dead or if he intended her to be with Anakin in marriage, and in fact planted those dreams in Anakin's mind in Episode 3, it is true that he suggested Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker to her in 22 BBY to distract Padme, his biggest political opponent, and to distract Anakin, who he wished to corrupt. At 3 is Battle Colors. Colors were used throughout the Battle of Geonosis scenes to make it easier to know which side is which. For example, the Republic missiles leave behind clean white trails of smoke, whereas the Separatist missiles are black and purple. The star over Geonosis is always behind the clones, whereas the backdrop to the droids is a darker angle of the atmosphere. And most interesting is that while the droids always move from left to right on the screen, the clones move from right to left. This contradicts the usual rule to have good guys move the conventional way, left to right, and the bad guys to go against the flow, right to left, and actually does the opposite to foreshadow how the clones will eventually become the Empire. At 2 is Palpatine as Hitler. When the Galactic Senate votes to give Chancellor Palpatine supreme powers when going into war against the Separatists, this is a direct mirror to when Adolf Hitler secured dictator-like powers over Germany after promising this transition of power was in the interest of them going to war against Europe. And 1 is World War I parallel. The attempted assassination of Padme Amidala at the beginning of Attack of the Clones mirrors the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary, and this small event led to a chain reaction of conflicts resulting in World War I. This mirrors the small event of Padme's failed assassination that eventually led to the discovery of the Clone Army, the discovery of the Separatist Council, and Anakin and Padme's attempt to rescue Obi-Wan Kenobi from Geonosis, which was considered to be a direct act of war.
You're committing an act of war, Archduke. I hope you're prepared for the consequences.
And if you found this video interesting, then you might also enjoy this one right here, where I looked at the 20 craziest facts from the Clone Wars, but yeah, see ya. The third Star Wars prequel movie, Revenge of the Sith, completely changed the way fans saw the original trilogy and Darth Vader, and also became one of the most beloved films in the franchise. However, to celebrate the 20th anniversary re-release of this movie in April,
This is where the fun begins.
today I unearthed 20 of the wildest facts, from the origins of Anakin's famous scar, to the unused reveals that Palpatine was Anakin's father, and that General Grievous was Darth Maul back from the dead. And since Episode 3 was the first PG-13 Star Wars film, I'll also briefly rank the other 5 Star Wars movies from least to most dark. 20. How does Anakin get his scar? In the graphic novel Star Wars Republic 71, Anakin duels Asajj Ventress on Coruscant and gets his scar from one of her 2 red lightsabers. In this same scene, she threatens to kill Padme, who she knows to be on Coruscant at this time. At 19 is Mount Etna. While much of Mustafar was made up of CGI landscapes, there was actually some footage of Mount Etna erupting in Italy that was filmed during production and used in the background. At 18 is Darth Vader's suit. Once Lucas agreed to have Hayden Christensen in the suit at the end of Revenge of the Sith, he also had it be top-heavy with specific weight added to the helmet so that it would look like Vader wasn't accustomed to it. Also, since Hayden isn't as tall as David Prowse, who originally donned the Darth Vader suit, he was forced to look out of the mouthpiece rather than the eye holes, and I can only imagine how awkward this would have been.
I can't see a thing in this helmet.
At 17 is Steven Spielberg. Director Steven Spielberg actually helped his longtime friend George Lucas with ideas for this movie. Not only did he help with the Mustafar lightsaber duel scene, including the moment where Anakin and Obi-Wan fight on the fallen leg of the facility, but he also was a big influence on the Order 66 sequence, particularly with the artful death of Aayla Secura. At 16, Qui-Gon's Force Ghost. Yoda tells Obi-Wan that Qui-Gon found a way to communicate with him from the netherworld of the Force, but at one point while developing the movie, Qui-Gon's Force Ghost was to appear with Liam Neeson making a cameo for the film. This would have furthered the understanding of Force Ghosts seen in the original trilogy. At 15 is Tunisia Shoot. While filming the scenes for the Lars homestead in Tunisia for Attack of the Clones, they actually decided to film the final scene of Revenge of the Sith here as well, with the young Owen Lars actor Joel Edgerton, which means the first shot of Revenge of the Sith was filmed in the year 2000, 5 years before the release of the actual movie. And it's funny how the last scene of the film is also the first one that they shot. At 14 is C-3PO's suit. C-3PO's suit was a nightmare for the movie because the green screens reflected off of his suit, meaning the visual effects artists had to repaint his body reflections frame by frame. And if I was one of the visual effects artists, I think I would consider quitting at this point because that sounds awful. At 13 is 4 Hour Cut. The original cut of Revenge of the Sith was 4 hours long and featured an hour-long Battle of Coruscant sequence that many of the existing deleted scenes we have access to now would have been a part of. And fun fact before we continue, I just want to say that Revenge of the Sith is in fact my favorite Star Wars movie, so this is definitely a fun video for me to make. At 12 is Shaak Ti deaths. The Jedi Master Shaak Ti has 3 different death scenes across different Star Wars media. In one deleted scene from Revenge of the Sith, she is captured by General Grievous on the Invisible Hand and is killed by him with a stab to the back. In another deleted scene, she is killed by Anakin Skywalker in the Jedi Temple during Order 66 with another stab to the back. Lastly, in Legends and the Force Unleashed games. At 11, Vapod. Darth Sidious was supposed to be the most powerful Sith Lord of all time, so how did Mace Windu defeat him and without that much of a fight? This is because he used the Vapod variant of the 7th lightsaber form, which was specifically created by Windu to fuel off of the dark side energy of Sith during fights with them. Now let's real quick rank the other 5 George Lucas Star Wars episodes from least to most dark in honor of Revenge of the Sith being the first PG-13 Star Wars film. At number 5 is A New Hope. The movie that started it all doesn't have much dark elements other than Darth Vader's forced choke of Admiral Motti and the Death Star firing on Alderaan. At 4 is The Phantom Menace. Many would put this behind A New Hope, but I disagree, because the death of the main character is definitely a more dark moment than what happens in many of these films. At 3 is Attack of the Clones. I put Attack of the Clones right above The Phantom Menace because the death of Shmi is far more brutal and depressing than the death of Qui-Gon. At 2 is Return of the Jedi. Not only is Jabba's palace and the Emperor himself played off as more scary, intimidating aspects, but also Luke being brought to near death by Force Lightning, who is the main character of the movie, are very dark parts of this film. And at 1 is of course The Empire Strikes Back. This is the only movie outside of Revenge of the Sith where the bad guys win and Luke has his hand cut off and realizes that Darth Vader is his father. Plus, Han is frozen in carbonite with him taken to Jabba's palace. Back to the craziest facts though, at 10 is the changed opening. When development on episode 3 started, George Lucas first planned for the movie to open with 7 battles on 7 different planets to show the true size and devastation of the Clone Wars, and this is what he told the art department to design. After they decided there should be more development towards the seduction of Anakin Skywalker to the dark side, they made the opening sequence show Anakin and Obi-Wan infiltrating the Invisible Hand to rescue Palpatine, leading to Anakin killing Count Dooku at the Chancellor's command. At 9, Palpatine uses Anakin's lightsaber. In the fight between Darth Sidious and Mace Windu and the other 3 Jedi, that being Aegon Kolar, Saesee Tiin, and the best Jedi of all time, Kit Fisto himself, we actually see a few shots where Palpatine is clearly holding Anakin's lightsaber rather than his own unique hilt. This is because of an alternate version of this scene that originally existed where Palpatine uses Anakin's lightsaber as the young Skywalker walks next to them. Because in this version of the scene, he is somehow there before the Jedi Masters arrive. 8. Millennium Falcon. When first arriving on Coruscant, we see the Millennium Falcon which flies under the Senate building. This is a clear Easter egg for those who are watching the movie with a magnifying glass. Also, I just realized, who just owns a magnifying glass? I mean, I know my parents have one in our house, but it just kind of feels like a pretty useless thing to own. And funny enough, this Easter egg is a recurring Easter egg from the last movie, where we see multiple YT-1300 Corellian light freighters on Naboo when the characters first arrive. At 7 is Palpatine's terms. The Chancellor of the Republic is only supposed to be in office for 4 years at a time, but is allowed to have 2 terms in a row, which would bring it to 8 years. Palpatine used the Separatist Crisis to extend his reign to a 3rd term, and then when granted emergency powers, his chancellorship was extended for even longer. At 6 is Order 66 Survivors. After Order 66, we see that no Jedi, other than Obi-Wan and Yoda, survives, but thanks to the many shows and games taking place around this movie, we now know that this is not the case. The current list of Order 66 survivors includes Ahsoka, Cal Kestis, Taron Malicos, Jocasta Nu, Kanan Jarrus, Seer Junda, Grogu, Farron Barr, Kirik Infala, Gungi, and Kelleran Beck. But real quick, here's the Christian advice of this video. If you want to get back to the main video, then you can skip to this time right here. Today we are again looking at the Apocrypha, at specifically 1 Maccabees 13:5, which says, "And now far be it from me to spare my life in any time of distress, for I am not better than my brothers." This was in fact when Jerusalem was under attack. Not only are they facing their responsibility and doing exactly what they need to do, but also they're having a sort of confidence here that they will have the ability to do what is planned out for them. They have true faith here, which I feel like is pretty powerful. And basically it's just, you know, the idea of someone that is in a very tough situation where most people would fail, and they are facing their responsibilities and doing it, which is obviously very important on a day-to-day life. Now, getting back to the main video, I just want to say real quick, get excited because the winter merch drop is over now, and we're moving into our spring merch drop, which is going to be coming out this very week. But yeah, back to the video. At 5, Grievous is Darth Maul. One idea Lucas considered to make the characters of General Grievous and Darth Maul more interesting was to have Grievous be revealed as Darth Maul under this suit. This was ultimately abandoned to focus on Anakin in the story. At 4 is Han Solo. A deleted aspect of Episode 3 is for a young Han Solo to appear in the movie. And I mean, I guess it's okay they didn't do this, considering that Chewbacca made it into the film on Kashyyyk. At 3 is Rebellion deleted scenes. There were 3 different deleted scenes from the middle of this movie, with Padme and multiple other senators who were opposing Chancellor Palpatine's policies and wanting the Republic to go back to democracy. This makes the scene of Padme and Bail Organa later much more impactful.
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.
At 2 is Vader's origins. The scene of Darth Vader being defeated by Obi-Wan and horrifically injured, leading to his transformation into the suited monster himself, actually went back to 1975 when George Lucas was finishing up the story for Star Wars. From all the way back then to the making of Revenge of the Sith, he always had the idea of him fighting in a duel against Obi-Wan on a volcano planet at the end of the first 3 films, and then being burned in the lava, turning into the suited Vader. But crazy enough, in the Return of the Jedi novelization, Luke asks Obi-Wan's Force Ghost about what happened to Vader, and he says that he defeated him and then he burned in molten lava. But at number 1 is Anakin's father. You know how Anakin has no father and was conceived by the Force? Well, there was a rejected idea in the first drafts of the script for Revenge of the Sith that had Palpatine as Anakin's father, who influenced the midi-chlorians to create Anakin. This would have completely redefined the relationship between these characters in this movie, as well as the overall saga, with this essentially being a mirror to Luke's revelation that Vader is his father in the original trilogy. And if you liked this video, then you might also find this one interesting, where I looked at the 20 craziest facts from Attack of the Clones. But yeah, see ya. Today I'm looking at the 17 craziest deleted scenes from Revenge of the Sith. From a scene of clone troopers disguised as Jedi, to an extended Obi-Wan versus Grievous fight with Obi-Wan ripping out his brains and shooting them with a blaster.
So uncivilized.
And I'll also provide my opinion on why I think each scene was removed, because as an amateur director with 4 short films under my belt, I'd say I'm somewhat of a filmmaking expert myself.
Not yet.
Shaak Ti deaths. So in her first death scene in these deleted scenes, Anakin and Obi-Wan round a corner and find General Shaak Ti being held hostage by General Grievous. Anakin and Obi-Wan are quickly surrounded by battle droids.
Oh no! Anyway,
And Grievous kills Ti with a Shiek strike to the chest. Anakin and Obi-Wan have a brief sign language moment over what method they should use to escape. Then they draw their lightsabers and slice a hole in the floor. They fall down into the Invisible Hands fuel tank, and the surrounding battle droids proceed to take aim, but the experienced Separatist commander orders his troops not to fire in order to prevent the fuel from igniting. Then Shaak Ti is killed in a different deleted scene where Anakin enters the meditation chamber in which Shaak Ti is concentrating and stabs her in the back before leaving the chamber and walking through the Jedi temple as it is being attacked. Now, why Shaak Ti was meditating in the middle of a attack on the Jedi temple, I'm not really sure, but maybe she thought she was as cool as Qui-Gon here. and I believe that both of these were most likely removed to keep the pacing going, and because Shaq-Ti wasn't a major character to focus on. I also feel like George Lucas listened to some of the criticism of the first two prequels about them being too slow. Next up is the Rebel Alliance subplot. The first is a stirring in the Senate, Bael's office. This has senators including Bail Organa and Mon Mothma present the movement against the Chancellor to Padme, sowing the seeds of the Rebel Alliance. Then we've got Seeds of Rebellion at Padme's apartment, and Padme suggests bringing the plan to the one Jedi she trusts, but the group agrees to appeal to the Senate first. Finally, this all comes together with confronting the Chancellor in Palpatine's office, where the senators, now including Jar Jar, present the petition to Palpatine and Anakin, who is acting as his personal bodyguard. These were likely cut to spend less time on the politics of the movie, which was another major complaint of the previous films. If you think about it, if this would have been kept in, this movie would have had the same pace as the others, and since Revenge of the Sith has the most stuff to unpack, that would have made this the longest, likely upwards of 2.5 hours. Alternate Anakin vs. Dooku duel. Before arriving at the Chancellor's cell, Obi-Wan gets captured by droids, where he faces General Grievous, so Anakin would fight Dooku alone. Dooku would reveal that it was he who had made the Tuskens kill Shmi Skywalker. Then Anakin becomes enraged and eventually defeats and kills him. I feel like it actually was better to see Anakin and Obi-Wan working together in a duel for at least once in this trilogy, and also the idea of Dooku orchestrating Shmi Skywalker's death for sure feels pretty contrived. Jedi meeting. So for this scene, Obi-Wan, Mace, and Yoda meet in the temple to discuss the darkness surrounding Chancellor Palpatine. Mace actually suggests removing the Chancellor from office if he doesn't give up power, and Yoda warns that this will take them to a dark place, if so.
To a dark place this line of thought will carry us.
This scene was replaced by the Jedi War Council scene, which was quicker and more concise. Yoda on Dagobah. Here, in this deleted scene, Yoda arrives on Dagobah in the final montage of the movie. This scene is mentioned in the novelization, and while this concludes Yoda's involvement in the prequel trilogy, which was definitely more so than in the originals, it also isn't as important as the setup of the twins on Alderaan and Tatooine. Elevator antics. Anakin and Obi-Wan banter while waiting for the elevator on the Invisible Hand. Additional cut lines include Obi-Wan commenting how elevators never come when you need them, as they block blaster bolts from the oncoming droidekas, and the Jedi pair mockingly say "Roger, Roger" after they defeat the battle droids in the elevator.
Roger, Roger.
Considering the seriousness of this scene, I feel like this much humor would have taken away from the Battle of Coruscant section of the film, so that's probably why it was cut. Next up is Extended Order 66. A completely alternate sequence features the deaths of Barriss Offee, who, while fighting on Felucia, is shot by an all-terrain tactical enforcer from behind, which proceeds to step on her body, and that's an ATTE for those who are complete idiots. Next up is Luminara Unduli, who is quickly surrounded by her troops and gunned down, and Quinlan Vos, who is riding a convoy of HAVWA-6 juggernauts, when the one in front of him suddenly stops and opens fire on his. So yeah, he got completely screwed, bro. Other differences from the final sequence include the Separatist attack on Kachiro, beginning with Palpatine executing Order 66. Then we have Wookiees jumping inside the oncoming tank droids and killing their droid drivers, and Ki-Adi-Mundi was going to be killed on Kamino instead of Maigito. Also in the Jedi Temple are extended footage for the deaths of Wee Malruix, Bane, and Sindralig, featuring more shots of Anakin dueling with the latter. While an Extended Order 66 would have hit harder for sure, what we got in the movie was more than enough to move the story along as was needed. Next up is Anakin and Palpatine. Palpatine presents legal changes meant to end the war to Anakin, and this is an extended version of the scene known as the Chancellor's Request from earlier in the movie, where he basically asks Anakin to be his personal representative on the council. This scene doesn't read as well as the other Anakin and Palpatine moments, as Palps comes off as more evil here to an unbelievable level for still trying to convince Anakin. And I guess Anakin is just an idiot in this version. Extended Grievous versus Obi-Wan. When Grievous escapes on his wheel bike and Obi-Wan whistles for Boga, the Vractal destroys a crab droid with her tail before jumping down. An extended chase in which Grievous and Kenobi travel down a highway and hit oncoming vehicles, fly past active battlefronts, and continue through a train tunnel, which forces Grievous to at one point drive through an entire moving train, crashing into passengers, all goes down in this version. Grievous uses his bike to spin rocks and body parts of dead clones at Obi-Wan and Boga, and later spin a giant wind turbine to block Obi-Wan from reaching him. Grievous landing several successful punches on Obi-Wan's face happens next, and Obi-Wan tears out the general's insides, including his heart, which he proceeds to shoot, killing Grievous, after which he kicks the body off of the landing platform. So yeah, this one definitely could have been rated R if that had happened in the movie. Clones dress as Jedi. When Obi-Wan and Yoda arrive at the Jedi Temple, they find a group of clone troopers disguised as Jedi waiting outside. The two Jedi aren't fooled and kill them all. This scene appears in LEGO Star Wars the video game, and the movie includes the second half of this scene, removing the dialogue and using CG to enhance the clones' robes and give them 501st helmets. The humor in this scene is out of place, and as clever as it would have been for the clones, which I like, it also is too distracting at this relatively fast-paced section of the movie from Order 66 to the creation of the Empire. But real quick, here's the Christian advice of this video. If you want to get back to the main video, then you can skip to this time right here. Today I just wanted to say that you should not be saying the Lord's name in vain, such as oh my, or gosh, geez, any of those kinds of phrases, even if they aren't the actual words themselves. It's not the most important thing in the world, but the Bible does say that this is blasphemy and that we shouldn't be doing it. And it does really suck because it is very normalized in society. But if you do this, I'm sure it will please God and will strengthen your relationship with Him. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, getting back to the video, remember you can subscribe if you want to. I make some pretty cool videos, so it might not be a bad idea. But yeah, back to the video. Extended Yoda versus Palpatine. Immediately after Sidious and Anakin's hologram call, Sidious is the first to attack, launching a bolt of Force lightning, but Yoda grabs the Imperial guards and uses their bodies to block it. Palpatine launches another attack, throwing the Jedi into a wall, but Yoda recovers and knocks the Emperor to the floor with a flying kick. When Palpatine is blasting Yoda with lightning on a floating pod, Yoda manages to redirect the lightning to a camera droid, hitting the Sith Lord from all directions and knocking him off. Additionally, Palpatine uses Force lightning to blow open the roof and escape on a Senate pod. I think this version of the scene was left unused because it would have made the scene way longer than it needs to be. Extended Anakin versus Obi-Wan. Anakin uses the Force to throw steel beams at Kenobi in this scene, and as the enemies are dueling on the collection of pipes, Obi-Wan falls onto the pipe below, Skywalker's own, and then throws his lightsaber into the air, bringing the ladder down to his level. Anakin cuts that pipe, and they use the broken ones to swing to the main collection, but Anakin's maiming in this scene is a result of him jumping on Obi-Wan's platform on the lava river later on, dueling and going in for an overhead strike. Obi-Wan notices his legs are undefended and quickly slices them off, causing him to fall to the bank of the lava river below. I'm glad they changed this to the high ground because with this version there's no real reason why Anakin loses here. And if you liked this video, then you might also like this one where I ranked every deleted scene from the prequel trilogy. But yeah, see ya.